good, man?
I'm good to go.
Sweet. So, welcome back to the Waking Up from Work podcast. This is Dave Swillum. Tonight, I'm actually going to be flying solo. So, no Ryan getting to meet you, Pete. You'll have to meet him another time. He's my co-host. We kind of had to roll with the punches to get this booked because you're a busy man, and I am too. And tonight is also surprisingly the first time that I've ever, out of any of my episodes, ever gone remote, which makes zero sense for a podcast. Like everyone does it through Zoom. So I had kind of like my like learning wheels on tonight. So thanks for cutting me into the real world here, the Zoom world. Happy to have you, man. Thanks for hanging out tonight, taking a piece of your night to hang out and talk with us.
Well, I appreciate it, man. I'm glad to be here. Glad to be on. I'm honored, and I appreciate you asking me to come on and add some value to your audience.
Hell yeah, man. Yeah. So for those of you that don't know Pete, I actually personally met you from Jesse Harless on episode 3, and I don't know. We've kind of jived and been connected since that point, like a bit. Like I saw you at Nick's show, like I went to his EP release show that time and I saw you there and we chatted, but we kind of got reconnected recently because I was picking your brain on real estate. And dude, I guess like I was impressed with some of the stuff that you were working on like when I first met you, but now like I recap with you maybe a year later and then like you're already like just dug in deep more than I had met you last. So there's been a lot that's been happening.
Yeah, a lot of good stuff. And you actually, I think it was like the day before you were leaving for your honeymoon, you really went the extra mile to help me out with a situation with my phone. I don't know if you remember this, like stayed late.
Oh yeah. Oh my God. I totally did do that.
You stayed late. It was a wonderful experience. And, Jesse's always spoke very highly of you, and then, getting to know you and making some connections as well with, Nick Wright and George Peterson, who you've helped with some air projects. There's definitely this connectedness and this synchronicity. So, it's cool, man. It's cool to connect and cool to continue.
I 100% forgot about that, dude.
Yeah.
That's so funny. Now I like 100% remember it. Yeah, I was like right about to go away. I talked to you about, you had just went with Jesse to Switzerland, like not long before that, I think, right?
I think, you know what? Maybe like a couple months. We was Switzerland March. Yeah, it was a few months after that. So yeah.
That's crazy. So for those of you that don't know Pete, this is Pete Marston. I got it, right?
You got it.
Pete Marston. I'm bad with last names. And just on like a broad basis, he is in long-term recovery. He is a husband, a father, an entrepreneur, a real estate investor and business investor, and a speaker. And it's just he's got a lot going on. So you want to kind of run people through that in just like a more
Sure.
Yeah.
So the most important things out of all of those descriptions is I'm a husband and I'm a father. Those are the most important things to me. I'm an entrepreneur, and we're going to talk a lot about what that looks like and what my journey's been like. And I speak a lot at different on different platforms about recovery. So I share my story to help other people come out of a place that they might be coming out of a dark place. I might be able to help them kind of enhance their life a little bit by sharing my message of hope. And so my story basically is I got sober when I was 25 years old. I had a crazy, alcohol and drug dependency on some pretty heavy stuff. Didn't think I was ever going to come out of it. And, after I tried to take my life at 25, the day before Mother's Day, and then I came up out of that, suicide attempt. I came back to consciousness, and that morning I went to treatment. And that was May 11th, 2008. I've been sober a day at a time ever since. So a big part of my story. I'm very proud of that. And that was very much the catalyst for do I want to continue kind of existing in this life, or do I want to thrive in my recovery and really set some big goals, take some big actions, and live a life that I've always wanted to live. I just didn't know how to live. So,
Right.
So I got this unbelievable job, this job that I had no business getting at a very large company in New Hampshire. And so my business now is I own it's Live Free Heating and Cooling. It's a heating and cooling company, and we provide installation, maintenance, and service solutions for residential homeowners. In a nutshell, that's what we do.
Okay.
So I had gotten this job at this massive HVAC company. I was 6 months sober, and I set goals, when I first got sober, things that I wanted to do. And as part of that, like, I started to achieve all of these things.
What were some of those, not to break you at all, Pete, but what were some of those goals that you set at that point in time?
Well, since I got sober, I've always set goals. Every year, I've always set goals. And back then, I think some of the first goals that I set in recovery were like, I needed to get a car because I burnt my life to the ground. I had nothing. Like, I needed to get a car. I needed to get a job. I wanted to make a certain amount of money, and I would be very specific, and I would write down like how much I wanted to make. Back then, it might have been like I wanted to make $40,000 a year. So, simple goals. They were definitely like
definable,
measurable. Yeah, the whole SMART goal setting acronym was something that I had used without even knowing what it was back then. But they were specific, measurable, attainable, realistic, and timely. Like, I would set a date to when I want to achieve these things by.
Sure.
And that one action there is something that I'd never done my whole life, just because I wasn't, living a very productive way,
Right.
So I got this job, and, I had always been like this. I had always had like this entrepreneurial mind. Like, I was definitely the guy in my neighborhood that was knocking on doors, asking if I could shovel driveways when it snowed, asking if I could rake leaves, riding the lawnmower around to mow people's lawns, building my old lemonade stand and putting it out on Main Street. Like, I was always doing that stuff. My parents always made me pay my own way. If I want a pair of rollerblades, I'm saving my money to buy them,
Dude, so I haven't told the story on the podcast yet, but when I was in high school, I wanted an Xbox. Hold on, actually, I'm sorry. It would be way weirder if it was high school. It was middle school, and I wanted an Xbox. And my parents told me that if I like saved up my allowance and stuff like that would get me my Xbox, right? But I didn't want to wait for that. I wanted to expedite it. So I used to go and buy candy at BJ's wholesale, and then I would sell it to people on my school bus, because that was the time where they would have some money left over from lunch maybe, or so that change. And they were in a position where they were either hungry or like they couldn't get anything. They were waiting to get home, and they would always buy candy at like 10 times the cost. So my margins were good. Dude, the demand was always there. And then like people literally knew me about it to a point where I actually got grabbed and I got taken into the principal's office, and they thought I was a drug dealer, dude. They were like, listen, we know what you're doing. Like, people are talking about it. Like, you need to stop right now, or it's obviously going to catch up to you. And I'm like, I thought I could sell candy. Like, I don't know what your thought, but so I get it, man. Like, a hustler's always a hustler, right? Like,
yeah,
you're always thinking that way.
Always thinking that way, so I had that like growing up, like you had it. And, when I got sober and then I ended up getting a job at this company, like, I lost that, and I was an employee, and I was a good employee. I worked hard. I definitely took ownership. Like, I was, upper management or owner of that company. Like, I had a lot of pride. And, I worked at that company for just over 6 years. And then I had an opportunity to go down to Boston to work at a larger company with a different compensation package. And about 6 months into that stint of employment, one of my associates was talking about how when he was my age, he had a side business. and he had a van and he had a name, and, you know, he'd work all day and then he would go run calls at night and makes money on the side doing that. And I'm like, huh. And that kind of sparked it for me. So at about, 7 years in the industry is when I decided, hey, my brother's a huge part of my story and my life, but he's my business partner and he has a totally different set of skills in the HVAC industry. So we had a conversation, and people would always ask us to do stuff for them, and we would always just say no. And then we decided, hey, with our skill sets, he can do this side of the business, I can do this side of the business. Let's be really strategic, and let's make a run at doing our own thing.
So what types of things were they asking where you had to say no at the time?
People were just
asking for service, basically?
Yeah, can you install a boiler for me? Can you install a water heater for me? And moonlighting, where I worked, it was frowned upon, so.
Right, because that's the same industry, right? The same vertical?
Same industry, same area, right? So,
sticky.
So we would say no, and part of it too, why you say no is, from our perspective, is like liability,
Yep.
You're working 5 days a week, 60 hours a week. You install a system on a Saturday, and on a 3 months down the road on a Wednesday, cold snap, my heat's not working. You need to get out here immediately. It's like,
right.
Manage that. It's tough. So when I went down to Boston, we decided to be very strategic and said, hey, we're going to start something up. And that's what we did. And I'll tell you, like, I didn't, when I was working that first job at that local company here in New Hampshire, and I was like, I didn't want to be a business owner. I was a good employee. I was good at, trading my time for money. And I was a performer, I was just a good guy you want to have employed for you. I didn't want the headaches of being a business owner. And that way of thinking, whatever, there's plenty of people that are, employees in this world, and the world needs employees. But I'm so glad that I was able to kind of smash off of that one conversation where the guy said, when I was your age, this is what I did. And then it's the spark. Yeah.
Yeah. And so I'm kind of in a position where it's like something clicked and I'm there, and I know everything's going to fall into place and happen. But like, once that happens, like, you can't really change the mindset. Like, I just can't I literally can't think differently. And it disrupts, like, now, like working daily. Now it's like, I can't change that viewpoint ever again. It's just there now.
Mm-hmm.
So that's probably what happened. Like, you had a certain view, then all of a sudden it clicks, you're thinking differently, and you're like, I used to be scared of like getting prepped to take this all the way, right? But now it's like I'm scared of not, because like I just can't think any other way than to do that. I don't know if that's how you felt.
Yeah, I get obsessed about things. So yeah, I get you on that. And then I also have this component of, do I want to live my whole life and regret never doing it?
Yep.
There was this whole other element to it. Like, how would I know if I was going to be successful, if I was going to fail, if I never actually swung the bat, Yep. So there was that piece to it as well. And so one of the things that I did early on was, my best buddy, Jesse Harless, he had gotten a coach, and he was getting, having all these breakthroughs. He was working, Verizon, and, he's crushing it there, whatever. And I could see what was happening in his life. And then I'm like, I need to get a coach. So I interviewed a few different coaches, and I hired a coach to coach me, 3 times a month for an hour. And that person, her name's Christy Geiger, she was like instrumental. She was so critical in the growth and the momentum of starting a business. So, one of the things that we ended up doing was we started this kind of slow climb, and we became like weekend warriors. We were very strategic with, making sure we had everything kind of set up. So we wanted to have our name, we wanted to have our insurance, we wanted to have our liability insurance, we wanted to have all the bases covered. And then, hiring the coach, she was able to very methodically, we would have these conversations, and she would ask me a bunch of different questions, and then she would make these recommendations of different ways to market, different systems I should implement. And I just started like, and I would take tons of notes, and she would take notes too and send them to me, and I would just start to take action on all these things.
So what went into finding a coach that worked for you? Like, where do you then find these people other than natural mentors that happen? Like, what went into that?
So I called a company called the Coach Connection, and that's what they do, is they hook you up with a coach. So you talk to this guy, his name's Bill, and he wants to find out who you are, what you want to do. He really wants to find out if you're coachable and if you're a good fit, if you're ready to have a coach, if
Right.
you're ready to be held accountable. And, if you are, then he says, okay, well, I have, this big, large pool of coaches that essentially work for him. And then he connects you with who he thinks is going to be the best fit for what you're trying to do. So I talked to 3 different coaches. They were all phenomenal. I chose Christy. And then since then, I've gone to a number of different conferences and have joined different mastermind groups, with different entrepreneurs from all over the globe. And I've hired coaches from those as well, like people that I've just met at some of these conferences.
Right.
And one of them I've had for years, and he's more of like a mindset coach.
Okay.
So he's helped me with a ton of different stuff, relationship stuff, overcoming fear, systems of my business. When I have to give a talk on stage, he's helped me craft my speech. So coaches are extremely valuable. Masterminds too are very valuable.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
It's something you hear like all the time. I feel like you hear it in a lot of entrepreneurial podcasts and things like that. And I don't know. I mean, it's definitely something that even I should consider, but I guess it's something that I don't know, like everything. We'll get into like real estate later, but it's like you have all these concepts like that or anything, and you almost think that it's like something. It's like, oh, that's something that someone else does because they're at a certain level or something like that, and you don't just get into it, but it's kind of something that makes sense. If successful people are doing something, then why wouldn't you implement it in yourself if you project your success on that level? Right?
Yeah. Yeah. I think coaches that have the ability, if they, you can hire coaches you can hire a financial coach that's living paycheck to paycheck. I mean, you got to find the right person, you can find people that are life coaches that might not should be a life coach. You know what I mean? But you can also find really good coaches and, even mentors that have walked the path and can add a ton of value and take what might take you 10 years on your own and turn that into 2 years, if you find the right person. So
okay. Just through accountability, like getting you to, keep thinking in different ways and challenging it, basically like someone that aligns with the conversations that you want to have on it. Is that a lot of the things that they're contributing?
Well, I think
some people you can't share things with the same way, I imagine.
Yeah, that's definitely true. So I'll share with you about the masterminds for just a quick second. So mastermind is, it's a group of people. They might be in completely different businesses. They might be all in the same industry. So my experience in masterminds, I've been a part of 2 of them. And there's weekly calls, and you get to know these people very, very well. And the most recent mastermind that I was in, we would meet once a week, every Thursday. And we met for probably a year and a half consistently every Thursday. And each member might have missed maybe 2 or 3 meetings. I mean, it was not a low attendance. I mean, everybody was on the call. So what we would do is we would go over our wins for the week, and we would share what was good and, what we could celebrate together. So that was awesome. And then we would share, if we achieved our goals that we'd set the week prior, we would share our reward and how we rewarded ourselves for achieving those goals. If you didn't achieve those goals, and these are all individual, if you didn't achieve those goals, you would share what your consequences were. So there was this concept of setting a consequence for when you didn't achieve your goal or goals, and a reward for when you did achieve your goals.
Interesting.
Which is it's depending on the consequence.
What would be some on both sides? Like what would be some rewards or consequences from that?
So one of my consequences was, if I didn't hit, a certain revenue goal for the week, I'd have to go jump in the Merrimack River in the middle of January.
Which you did with Jesse once.
Twice. Yeah. So I would always try to make my consequences a healthy positive. So like jumping in the river in the cold months is exhilarating. You will not feel more alive than when you jump in the river and it's 20 degrees outside. There's a lot of health benefits too. So, but like another consequence would be like a 2-day juice cleanse, 7 days of cold showers, something like that, Rewards would be a float session. I love to go floating at NH Float. There's another one locally here in Concord. 1 hour massage. But I invested heavy in cryptocurrency. So if I did really well on my goals for the week, I would buy a certain amount of cryptocurrency. So, but these consequences were just keep me on track. And I'll show you real quick. Like I set goals, a lot of goals. So this is my goal settings in my notebook that goes with me everywhere. So at the top, so that's one side, and then this is the other side. This is all on a spreadsheet. So it's a lot to keep up with. It's actually pretty impossible to do. So what I would do is I would break these down into process goals, and then I would focus on certain ones each week. Some of them are like goals like, juice cleanse once per month. So I'd have to do 12 of those. But you can measure all this stuff by putting a number to it and then tracking it. And then you see how you did it throughout the year as you go. So all this stuff is like one of the tabs on my desktop computer. But how I've been able to do what I've been able to do with Live for Heating and Cooling, the real estate stuff. I also invested in another business out the Seacoast, is by setting goals and holding myself accountable with that consequence reward system, and then a peer group with a mastermind or even a coach. And coaches do the same thing. It's just one-on-one. You say what you want to get done. Next week you follow it up, depending on, if the coach is like, some coaches aren't hard asses. Some of them are just like, let you do your thing. I need a little bit more accountability otherwise.
Right.
So while I say that, I take a lot of action and get shit done, but I like more accountability.
Okay.
So.
All right, dude. Well, I totally broke up and disrupted your story for Live Free.
Well, we were talking about the coaches. So that was, I hired a coach. She was awesome. I ended up discontinuing working with her after, I don't know if it was a year and a half. And it was a hard decision to make because I felt like she was very much a part of the company. She had helped in so many ways. She helped with, me finding a great designer and the branding of it, of the business. She helped with, some of the website stuff. She helped with the CRM that we use, some of the recommendations she made. So she was like, she really was like a part of the business during that first year.
Right.
And then, going back to goal setting, like I set a date that I was going to leave my job and, have enough work scheduled to keep. At that time, it was just, my brother and myself, and we were going to keep ourselves busy, and we needed to actually, I wasn't going to pay myself too. This is an important point. My brother and I had enough money so that we weren't going to pay ourselves. And then I listened to a book, Rich Dad, Poor Dad, and it totally smashed my concept on not paying myself.
Okay.
And then we said, we're going to pay ourselves X amount of dollars per week. And the reason why I wasn't going to pay myself is I still had that fear that, we might not be successful. So let's make as much money as we can, just put it all into the business.
Right.
But, Rich Dad, Poor Dad, Robert Kiyosaki talks about making sure you pay yourself first, always, and then it adds pressure for you to perform and grow your business and to get your customers and provide great service. So that's one thing.
Because you basically, the reason why that happens, you think, is because, like, I know for me, if I have, like, I have employees now for what I do, but like if I have any employees or something, like if I paid myself, I'm going to feel like I just basically, you basically just can't not pay them. You can't not pay your other bills, I guess. Like I would probably feel more pressure if I paid myself than if I didn't, I think.
Yeah.
Because I'll always sacrifice myself. I feel like I'll always be like, well, I'll figure it out. Is that why you think that worked that way for you?
I don't know. I feel like if I didn't pay myself, it would have been fine. I just think paying myself and paying myself well, paying ourselves, so we pay ourselves the same, just adds that level of shit. We got to make it happen. We have to make it happen because I'm paying myself no matter what. I'm going to get paid first, but I still have this responsibility to pay anybody that I hire, which we've hired a few people at this point. We've got 3 employees, and also I have bills to pay. I got to pay my social media platforms that we advertise through. I have to pay my supply houses that we get our materials from, and those bills are big every month. I have to pay for our service vans. I have to pay the insurances. There's so much, but we pay ourselves first, and it keeps that fire burning for us. So
I like that.
But I wasn't going to, and then I read that book, and I was like, shit, I gotta pay myself first. And now I know it would have been out of integrity and out of fear to not pay myself.
Right.
So I still had that. I'm not going to pay myself just in case, but so yeah, I would recommend that book to anybody that's, especially wants to get into real estate, but there's great concepts in there for any type of, entrepreneur. Rich Dad, Poor Dad. It's a good book, really good book.
Yeah, it's definitely, from the amount of people that I've talked to, a staple. And I feel like I did things in reverse for things that I've been reading, where I've been reading on things that are like a little bit more too in context, whereas that's like very broad topic. I feel like for this, it's on my list for sure.
Nice. Do you hear an echo? Is there like a weird playback thing going on?
I think that I'm getting it from you, from your phone, from Instagram Live.
All right.
I think.
I don't know. What can we do to stop that?
Check. The volume on your phone, I would just turn that way down, because you can hear me on this. You don't have to hear me on that. And hopefully, check.
Yeah, it sounds good now.
Yeah, I wish, dude, what sucks is I realized that like immediately, but I didn't want to break your stride because I was feeling it. So I took content over audio. So hopefully I don't regret that later.
Well, I didn't hear it on my end too much. So actually, it just started on my end. So, but you could probably take the audio just from the from one or the other from this here. So going back to the goal setting, I set a goal. I was going to leave my job June 30th, 2017. We put a lot of stuff in place to be able to, leave our jobs. And
sure.
I'll tell you, like the day before, I was, leaving my job, giving the keys back, giving my uniforms back, turning in the service van. I was at a customer's house. I literally felt sick to my stomach. Like I was gonna pass out and the customer's gonna come downstairs and find me on the floor. Like I just had that level of anxiety and fear. And the next day I went,
it's
back.
Real.
Huh?
That's when it's real, right? You're like, game time now.
Game time now, the day before. And then I went to work the next day, handed in my keys, and I had gotten picked up, drove back up to New Hampshire because I was, it's down in the Boston area. But I felt freedom, like real freedom. And my fear had just for whatever reason, just kind of faded away. But I
during jump time, you're saying?
Once I jumped out of the plane, I felt comfortable. I really felt comfortable. I was jumping out of faith. We had taken a lot of steps and done a lot of things really well. And, now we're, operating in the, fast forward now, we've been operating, from June 30th, 2017. So this June 30th will be 2 years we've been operating full time. And the first year we did, just under, $500,000. And then last year we produced over 7 figures. And this year we're tracking to, we won't hit, the $2 million mark, but we'll be just shy of it. So
that's insane, man. Congratulations.
Yeah. So it's awesome. Thank you very much. And one of the things that we do is, goal setting is extremely important for me, not just like as an individual, as a business owner too. So one of the things that my brother and I do is we get together once a quarter, in the beginning of the quarter, and we go over what is called a VTO, Vision Traction Organizer. And we go over what is the next 90 days going to look like, and we'll track out our goals, and then we'll, task them out, delegate them out to who's going to focus on them. And we'll update, for the year as well, where we're going to be. And then at the end of the year, we'll review all 4 of them. And oftentimes, if you set, 12 goals for the end of the year, we are in the, 9 to 10 range where we're hitting them. So it's been good. I just have this belief in writing goals down, looking at them multiple times a day, and staying on top of the tracking and measuring. It really increases your chances of hitting the goal. There's actual statistical data that proves this stuff. I don't know the numbers off, the top of my head, but I know that, just to try to kind of reiterate what they are, I know that if the goal is just in your head, you have like a 37% chance of hitting it.
Yeah.
When you write it down, it goes up to closer to 50%. When you write it down and then create process steps to get there, it gets up into the 60s. When you write it down, create your process steps to hit that goal, and then get accountability to it, then it's going to go up to like the 80s, and accountability is, whether it's a buddy you talk to once a week, doesn't matter. It's accountability. So,
right.
There's all types of studies done on it, and I certainly believe in them. I've had experience with, with those achievements that would certainly prove that data correct,
Sure. I mean, I think like there's something even natural to that where like I don't have the processes that you have. Like I don't have the concreteness that you have for the way that you goal set. Maybe that's something I'll check out because it sounds really helpful. But like even organically, like I think without knowing it, but now that you said that, you're like, hey, you talk to a friend every week or something. Like in episode, I think it's 8, I talked about someone that I vent to, but it's a friend of mine. But there's friends of mine that, dude, I'm constantly letting them know. I'm like, hey, I went in for this and the offer fell through. So now I'm doing this. Or this is what I'm aiming for and I'm planning on doing this by then. Or like, so that I feel like without me doing that, there were parts of me that were organically being like, in my head, I guess, like saying like, hey, you need to do this because to vent, because there would be times where I'd be like, hey, I lost. And I just wanted to share with someone else to be like, hey, I lost today on this. But then also to like give out to someone else too, other than just myself, like, but now I'm going to do this. So I think having it in an organized way, but I think that's definitely like, it's something that you feel like value in anyway. Like you're definitely like I'm starting to do that without having such an organized system anyway, which is probably why you like honed in on it and you're like, I'm going to lock down the way I do this because I'm seeing better results now that I do that.
Yeah. I mean, so I go back 11 years to when I first got sober and I was setting goals. What I would do is I would literally write them down on a piece of paper, close that notebook, and then I wouldn't even look at it for a whole year. And then I would open it up and I'd look at it and be like, damn, I got a couple of these, I got a few of these. and then things just kind of evolve over time. For me, they did. And I think every person is on their own, individual journey that's personal to them. So I know guys that don't set goals anywhere near the way I do it, because it can be a little bit overwhelming, but I think that there is that natural progression as well. And you ever listen to any Zig Ziglar at all?
No, but Ryan's all about them. He'd be all in it with you right now.
Yeah, so Zig Ziglar, man. So he talks about, and this is one of the main reasons why I find there's so much value in writing down goals. And he gives this analogy of your goal being this like target, right? The target goes, say you're shooting archery, and in order to shoot a bow and shoot an arrow at something, you need it to be in front of you, and that's your target. So the goals very much are your target that you write them down. And Zig Ziglar says, how do you hit something that you don't have in front of you? So write your goals down and keep them in front of you. That's your target if you're shooting the archery. So I mean, he's much more eloquent than I am with his analogy, but you get the gist of it.
Right.
So yeah. So that's kind of where we are now with the Live Free Eating Cooling business. And the real estate stuff is, do you want to get into the real estate stuff a little bit?
Yeah. So for listeners, like for context, like a conversation that I think I just like let you guys know where I'm at is I'm selling my house right now, and I'm potentially investing in a my first investment property, which would be kind of like a house hack type of deal, because we're trying to get lean. And I hit up Peter because I think I was talking to Jesse about it. And then Jesse said, oh, dude, you have to talk to Peter. Like, he's in deep in that right now, and he's going to love talking about that anyway. So, like, you got to hit him up. And so Pete's been actually really giving me some – I got my cat, like, clawing my leg. Pete's been getting me some great information and someone that I'm kind of quizzing on this. But what I've seen from him basically is – he's killing it in Live Free. And then basically it seems like you hit this up because obviously you learned about it and you wanted to diversify, but what kind of led you into real estate? And then, like, just for context for the listeners, like, where are you at and what are you doing in real estate now?
Sure. I've always been interested in real estate. I've always been interested in properties. I love houses. And so when I was 27, I had bought my first single family home. And I think I paid like $3,500 out of pocket to get the house. I was first time home buyer. And what I did when I moved in was, like, I didn't even have money to buy, furniture for the place. Like, it was a bachelor pad, I was sleeping on a bed that was on top of a piece of plywood on a cot, futon in the living room. So what I did was I rented it out it was a 3-bedroom. So I rented 2 of the rooms out to a couple of buddies of mine. And what we did is we just split everything 3 ways. I wasn't trying to, make money off of them. I was just trying to reduce expenses. So I was house hacking right from the beginning.
Okay.
And then wasn't really on my radar too much I had that property for like 5 years. And then I'm like, you know what? I really would like to get into some multifamilies. I'd like to buy some multifamilies.
Sure.
So I got married. My wife and I had been talking about real estate. We've been listening to Bigger Pockets, or I've been listening to Bigger Pockets, and decided, hey, I want to try out being a landlord. And I've learned so much in the last couple of years about, being a landlord and real estate and what are my non-negotiables and what my criteria is for when I'm looking at properties, when I'm analyzing deals, what I would like to, to jump into for the way the numbers work.
Sure.
But it started with a conversation. It started with a desire to want to learn about it. So, I realized that, I had this house for 5 years. I've been paying 1/3 of the mortgage for the entire time. The market was going up like crazy. So I bought it coming out of the downturn, 2011.
Okay.
I bought it at 192. And then, I had in the mix of, so I owned it for 7 years total. And when I was working in Boston, I actually was renting a place in Pelham, and I would stay there 4 or 5 nights a week. And my neighbors said, "Hey, we're going to be doing a renovation at the house. Would you rent us your house? Because you're gone all the time." I'm like, "Yeah, I will. I'll rent it to you guys." So
Nice.
I rented it to them for
Tenants by accident.
tenants by accident.
That's sick.
Yeah, it was great. I rented it to them for $200 a month more than what my mortgage was. They stayed there for 6 months. They never did the renovation across the street. And then they moved back home. And then I moved back in for a short period of time, got married. Bethany moved in with me for, I don't even know how long. It wasn't very long before we moved into a multi. And then I rented it for another year or two to 3 guys. And it was great, you know.
Single family.
Single family.
Single family, sure.
And same thing there. I was renting it for a couple $100 a month more than my mortgage. So I was making positive cash flow. And then we bought a duplex in the south end of Concord. And, you know, we bought that. Our expenses reduced again. And I'm like, geez, now I've got passive income from 2 different sources. I'm barely paying for the mortgages because my tenants are paying for them. The assets are appreciating, right? And I'm like, man, I really like this stuff. I think I want to dive deep into real estate. So another year went by, and then we decided, hey, well, let's buy another one. So we just bought another one a few months ago in September, and that's another 2-family. We did a full renovation on that one. And what we did with that was we bought it at $215,000. We did a full renovation on it. We increased the value to like $252,000.
Sure.
We refinanced it. We were able to pull out a good amount of money. So we got
because now the equity, because now it's worth this much, that your initial down payment that you put in, you say, hey, I want that back, is what's happening?
Yeah, you have to have a loan to value of 75 to 25. So you have to have that 25 has to be your down payment, essentially. Okay. So if you owe 250 if your house is worth 250, right? The loan's going to be 200,000 roughly, right?
Yep.
That's 25%. We only owed 170 on it, so we could pull out the difference between 170 and 200. We could take that out, put it in our pocket.
Okay.
That's seed money to buy the next deal. And we're actively looking for the next deal right now. So there's a lot of things you can do. So not only do we have positive cash flow every month from that property, we basically live for free. We don't have to pay a mortgage because our tenants now are paying for all that stuff. We're making money every month. Right. So as this kind of grows and builds, it just creates more passive income. So, you know, where I'm at, why I love real estate is you can do real estate 2 hours a week while you build your business, you know, however many hours a week you want to work. If you want to work 100 hours a week on your hustle and what you're passionate about, you can do that all day long and still put in 2 hours a week and just analyze deals and find your yes and your numbers. You know, you find a deal that makes sense. You want to buy it. The numbers are a hell yes. Make an offer on it. You know, real estate does not have to be a full-time job, but it is a great vehicle for passive income, for wealth, retirement, you know. So I love real estate and love what it's doing for us and what it's going to do for, you know, my family for, you know, I would say generations.
Yeah.
Because I'm not stopping. You know, I got the momentum. It's like a train. There's a lot of energy to get it going, but once it gets going, it's got tons of momentum. So
that's so cool, dude.
Yeah.
No, it's just like everything, right? Like you were super fearful for the business and then you do it and then you're in it, dude. You're like all in. And it's the same thing with this. Like you bought that first one. And then I'm sure the same thing will happen for me. Like I have a million things to learn, but if I do end up doing what I'm trying and I buy my first property, you know, I already think different about the way that I'm trying to approach that basically, and what I want to do moving forward has changed quite a lot just from learning a little bit and talking with you and reading up and listening to it.
Yeah. Yeah, it's exciting stuff, man. I geek out over real estate, and one of the guys, I just listened to his episode on Bigger Pockets today. I've listened to it a bunch of times. He says, don't wait to buy real estate, buy real estate and wait. Because you're going to get that. You're going to have markets that go up and down, the market cycles, but if you buy properly and you have the right cash flow, you vet your tenants properly, get good quality, solid people in there, you can ride the economic ups and downs,
Sure.
You just don't, be careful not to over leverage yourself with certain things, but yeah, it's an exciting time. It's a very exciting time. So one of the things that we did was we created LLCs for our real estate. So we created a holdings company, a real estate holdings company. It's an LLC. It's called Moksha Investments.
So real quick, like what even like for some of our listeners, like what? Because I think I'm like right now I haven't made enough that I'm still like just normal 1099. But what even goes into when you're forming an LLC for something like that? What do you have to do that? Is it simply just going through the state site, or you have other things in line that you need to do to make sure that things are accounted for properly?
It's as simple as going to the Secretary of State's office, paying them like $105, going on the IRS.gov site, getting an EIN number, and boom, you've got an LLC.
It's now, that easy.
If you have a partnership, then you need lawyers too. You don't need to. I would strongly recommend it.
Yeah.
Live for Heating and Cooling. My brother's my business partner. It's not a 50-50 partnership. There's one person with, more control, and that's just in case, push comes to shove, we get into a situation, somebody's got to make a decision that's in the best interest of the company.
Yep.
That's all it is. If you do the same, so we have a partnership agreement in place that is all drawn up with lawyers. And some people would say like, oh, I don't need a partnership agreement. I'm doing this with my brother. I would say that's more reason why you should have a partnership agreement.
Absolutely. Because then emotion's going to be quicker to come into play than a traditional business decision.
Sure. So with the real estate stuff, if it's just you can create your LLC, do it very quickly. And then you need to create a business bank account that is in that LLC name so you can cash checks and deposits. That way you can't just get a check written to, 14 Jackson Street LLC and then try to deposit your bank account. It's got to go into the bank account with the EIN number to it.
Okay. But easier for taxes, easier for cash flow, easier for everything, man. Yeah. Okay.
And it protects you. That's the idea behind the LLC is like, somebody slips and falls at one of my properties and it's an LLC. They can't come after me and everything else that I've got going on. They can go after that asset and that asset only.
Sure.
So there's protection there. If I was going to stop at like one or two properties, I probably wouldn't do it. But, my plan is to own lots and lots and lots of real estate.
Yeah.
So yeah, I want to protect each one of them, but they're all held underneath that umbrella of the Moksha Investments, and then they're in individual LLCs.
Wait, so you have one main LLC that's the Moksha Investments.
Yeah.
And then you're saying that each property is also an LLC?
Yeah.
And what's the purpose of doing that?
Well, if I enter into a partnership with somebody, the way it was explained to me with my lawyer, if I enter into a partnership with somebody, I'm probably going to butcher this.
Okay.
And if I didn't create like an LLC for the property, they would have to be a partner in Moksha, which is basically when I do enter a partnership, and I only have one, would go into that LLC for the property address. Okay.
Which would then go out, that would be like all of your assets basically, if they're in that.
The way it works is it's a pass through. It's not, it stops at the LLC. I see what you're saying, but I'm not a lawyer. I just, talk with them and they tell me what's what. And I say, yeah, that's fine. Sounds good. When it comes to LLCs, I don't even set my own LLCs up. I just have the lawyers do it.
Right. Okay.
So it's more of a time thing than anything. I've done it in the past. I just don't now. So, but yeah, so if Moksha Investments is, in the 232 LLC, which is an actual LLC that I have, if something happens with 232 LLC, they can't just go through 232 and go to Moksha and take what that has. It can only stop at the
one property.
Yeah, the one property.
Okay.
Yeah.
Interesting. That sounds interesting for taxes.
Yeah.
It sounds like a couple.
You get an accountant that has real estate, owns real estate, and knows real estate, and can kind of do it all up for you.
Yeah.
And do it all within, do it all the right way and do it all ethically, and that stuff's more important to me than taking the risk to be exposed to penalties and
not worth it.
Not worth it. Yeah.
Not worth it. Yeah. Makes sense. So, okay. So like on that note, cause I literally haven't talked about real estate on this podcast at all. So if people click with it at all, do you have any recommendations for, some of our listeners who have never thought of doing that before? What are the basics of like what they should start looking for or thinking about to potentially go that route?
First thing is got to get educated. You got to get educated. So find some resources, like Bigger Pockets podcast is phenomenal. What I love about Bigger Pockets is there's so many different things you can do in real estate. You can do wholesaling, which for anybody that doesn't know what wholesaling is basically you don't need a real estate license. You can put an offer on a property and then you basically trade the paper on that property. You put the offer on the property, you find someone else that's looking for that type of property, and they end up buying the property for you. You sell it for $10,000 more than you put the offer on it for, and you just made $10,000. You're literally just trading the paper. So that's wholesaling in a nutshell. There's commercial real estate. There's buy and holds, which is what I'm all about. I want long-term plays. I want properties I'm going to hold for 30 years, make cash flow. They're going to appreciate. I'm going to build equity in them. You can Airbnb, do short-term rentals. There's a lot of different things you can do. So you can do flips. So find out like what speaks to you the most. I've never been interested in flips, and yesterday I took a drive up to Lincoln, New Hampshire to look at a property that I am interested in trying to flip, and I'm going to go do a walkthrough tomorrow on that.
Okay.
But getting educated on Bigger Pockets, because they talk about everything. They talk about all that stuff I just, very briefly touched on.
Yeah.
And they bring like experts on their podcast. So you will certainly get an education. You will learn like what the numbers mean, what you should be looking for, what are your non-negotiables going to be, what's the criteria you're going to want to look for. And then, I think reading is another great way to, advance and learn very quickly, whether it's you're, reading physically or even listening to audiobooks. So I'm reading a book right now called The Millionaire Real Estate Investor. It's outstanding, written by Gary Keller. And then I would say, start looking at the market. I'll tell you a quick story, actually. I went up to Maine last week to visit a good friend of mine that I hadn't seen in a while. And a buddy of mine that I've known for about 11 years, he's in his 40s. He went up with me, and he's a guy I've always looked up to. But he's always, traded his time for money in a W-2 job. He's always rented. And he said, one of the reasons why I wanted to come up with you is I wanted to pick your brain on real estate, passive income. And I'm like, oh, this is awesome. Because he's always had this like concept of, money and spirituality can't mix. And he's very spiritual. He's very full of a lot of wisdom.
Yeah.
So I think there's always been this battle of like, do I want to have passive income? Do I want to have success and wealth? Will it go with my spiritual beliefs? And I think that it all can go together. For me, it all goes together. And so we were talking, and he's like, I think I want to buy a house. I'm like, why don't you? He goes, I don't have the credit to support it. They won't give me a loan. I'm like, well, what's your credit score? He goes, 650. I'm like, it's your lucky day. That's good enough credit to get pre-approved, depending on what your financials look like. So, and then he gave me some other reasons why he couldn't do it. I'm like, have you ever actually made the phone call to a lender to find out yes or no if you can or can't? And he's like, no, I've always been a bit too afraid.
Okay.
And I'm like, listen, this is what we're gonna do if you're willing to do this. When we get back tomorrow, because we were on the drive up to Maine, I'm like, let's set some goals for the next 7 days. So he's like, I'm willing to do it. So we went back to my office. He wrote down a bunch of goals, and they were to listen to a Bigger Pockets podcast that I sent him, to finish reading Rich Dad Poor Dad, because he started reading that, to call a lender and find out what he was able to do. And I can't remember what the other ones were, but the long story short is he ended up getting pre-approved by a lender yesterday.
Awesome.
But my point is, he's been living in this story that he's told himself for how many years: I can't get it because I don't have good enough credit.
Right.
And then with a push, with accountability, with some goals, within 7 days, he's on fire right now, looking at multifamily properties, talking to me about cash flows and what to look for. He's at my office today. So yeah, it's an exciting, I get fired up just watching people like get fired up about real estate, you know?
Right.
And, you know, one of my whole things as just an individual is to, you know, be a giver and to contribute. And whether that is, you know, time, resources, knowledge, financial, whatever it is, like, there's nothing more than I like than to have a conversation with somebody, see them get completely fired up, and then take some action on it and potentially change the rest of their life because they're going to start investing into something such as real estate.
Right. Yeah, it definitely, like I haven't even made that full move yet, but like I feel like I saw something that was like real estate, like all these things that are happening, it happens all around you every single day, but I feel like not enough people that I've talked to, at least before this point, had really been doing it. So like you don't think that it's something that's feasible, whereas like it's really super accessible for so many people, and it really seems like it's gonna it seems like it can make such a big difference for people, that it's like, why not do it? And it seems like, you know, you look at real estate, or you look at so many other things that like people that are wealthy do, and you're like, oh, they do it because they're wealthy, and you don't appreciate that maybe that, like, watch what people do, not what they say. So like if people are investing in real estate and they are wealthy, maybe that's a contributing factor for why they are wealthy people. And you know, they're not usually unintelligent people that have wealth, so they're usually doing things to put them in a strategic position. And so why not pay attention to something like that and see what's possible and what's not? So yeah, I mean, I wish I had thought about it differently earlier, but I'm glad that I kind of think differently now, and I'll see what happens, I guess.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, you'll be jumping in.
Yeah.
How old are you, Dave?
I am 27.
Yeah, perfect time to get started. Yeah, I bought my first one when I was 25. You know, I wish I had known what I know now back then, because I wouldn't have started with a single family. I would have dove right into multis.
Same.
You know,
I bought my first house when I was, gosh, probably around the same time, man. Like I got, yeah, it's been like 3 or 4 years. Around the same time, like I bought my first single family, and like we're actually in a pretty good position, luckily, because of the market. Yeah. We're probably going to run out of here with the equity that we need to hit up our first investment property. And then I think that I'm feeling good about being able to make moves in the future, not too far out from doing that. But that was by accident. Like it just happened. We didn't look at the area for like an economical standpoint or anything like that, or what's the market cycle look like or anything. We just bought this place, and we fixed it up a little bit, and luck put me in a better position to fight now, you know.
Hell
But
yeah.
I would have definitely bought first one house hack to live in, but everything happens, man. Everything's for a reason.
Yeah, and you're still. I was actually 27 when I bought my first house, not 25. So, but yeah, you're on the right path, man. I got tons of resources I can share when it comes to looking at different things when you're looking at properties, such as like different websites and things you can look at. So things that are important to look at too.
I would love that, and I would love that Excel spreadsheet that you were telling me about.
Yeah.
And for the listeners out there, like I'll recap with Pete after. Anything that he is willing to share, I will put in our show notes for episode 15 at the bottom. And definitely like all the books and podcasts, because he's got me hooked on that too. So I've been listening to Bigger Pockets as well, and it's good stuff if you like this type of thing. But I will put all these links in the show notes at wakingupfromwork.com for episode 15 with Pete. So you can check that stuff out later as well. So I always ask 5 questions, Pete, to like cap it out. One being, like basically what initially made you feel like you need to pursue what you do in a serious way, aside from the way that you've always done, essentially? What made you go from thinking about it even to being like, I'm doing this now, for real?
Freedom and lifestyle. So being a W-2 employee and I had a decent lifestyle. I could travel. I did well financially, but I didn't essentially have the freedom that I crave. I need to have.
Sure.
So I would say those are the 2 biggest things: is 1, freedom, and then 2, lifestyle. So, nowadays, like I'm focused on Live for Heating and Cooling. I'm focused on scaling my real estate portfolio, and the reason for the real estate portfolio being scaled is to increase my passive income to be what I call a 100%er, which is a term that I learned through one of my masterminds, which is where my passive income exceeds my living expenses. So I'm 100% financially free.
100%. Every move that you make is just a choice that you've made at that point in time because you wanted to. None of it is dictated by cash or capital. I mean, obviously for investment purposes in terms of your businesses, but like when you wake up in the morning, every choice is yours because you're not dictated by the dollar, is what you're saying.
Not dictated by the dollar. I don't have to, be at a meeting at 7 in the morning. I don't have to work until somebody tells me I can go home, know. So complete freedom.
Love it. So what is in this process? And everyone's super positive that I talk to, which I love, and it can still be positive, but what's like the biggest mistake that you've made throughout all of this? And it doesn't have to be something that you look back on, you're like, that's awful, because I'm sure you learned something from it. But what's something that maybe you could share as something that you'd like, I would really not want to do that thing, or I would wish for like some of the listeners, if they're following some of these same paths, to not do that thing in the process of all of this?
For me, there's 2 things. One, it might be cliche. I wish I started when I was younger. That's
yep.
The second,
so good.
I wish I had up-leveled my circle of influence when I was younger as well, instead of waiting to hire coaches and get into masterminds and be around people that are doing it at a higher level.
Right.
So your network is your net worth is your network. And you've probably heard it said you are the average of the 5 people you spend the most amount of time with.
Absolutely.
So if you're spending time with really successful business owners that are operating in these, high levels of, income bracket and serving a lot of people really well and doing a lot of good, you're going to be the 5th guy. If you're hanging out with 5 guys that are out the bar every single night, partying it up, you're going to be the 5th guy doing that too. So, so I think those are probably my top 2 is I wish I started earlier. I wish I started when I was 25 and finally got on the right path, buying multifamilies right out of the gate. And the reason for the multifamily versus a single family is it's just more insurance for you. You know, if you've got multiple doors under one roof, that's multiple streams of income paying you every month.
Right.
And so if one guy decides they can't pay you or not going to pay you, you still get the other two coming in. But if you have a single family and that guy says, or not even says, what if he loses his job, can't pay you for 2 months? Well, that means you got a goose egg for 2 months.
Right.
You know, so that's why I like multifamily over single family. And if you have an issue like a basement floods or something like that, multiple streams of income is going to equal more money versus one, you might get $100-200 a month passive. But if you have an issue that's, $3,500, that just wiped you out for the whole year.
Right.
You just lost all that. So that's another thing. I would have started with multis earlier.
I like it. Okay. Flip side to that, because we're super positive on this podcast, is what's the best idea that you've ever had? And it could even be in that same spot, but what's like the best idea through all this process that you've come up with?
The best idea.
I know.
The best idea is the best idea that I've had is to continue to evolve my level of knowledge and information intake in order to become the person I need to be to run successful businesses. And then on top of that, leveraging other people to do stuff that I'm not good at, such as answering phones for one. I hate being on the phone with customers and doing that whole dance. So I leverage another system, another company that's not even on the same side of the country as we are, and they answer 100% of the phone calls. They do 100% of the schedule. So just leveraging. You still there?
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah. So just leveraging different parts of the business and focusing on the things that I'm good at. So.
Cool. All right. So definitely gonna put Rich Dad, Poor Dad in there. Are there any other books that you'd recommend the listeners on mindset, business, industry, passion, anything like that you'd recommend?
Rich Dad, Poor Dad is really good. Man.
It can be just that book, man. If that's like, I know that that's a staple. Like everyone probably should read that who's listening to this podcast.
I think,
including myself.
One of my favorite books that is not a business related book.
Yeah.
Is called it's written by Deepak Chopra. I'm drawing a blank, man.
George is all in on him.
Dude. Yeah.
You want to talk Deepak, you talk to George.
The 7 Spiritual Laws of Success. It is a phenomenal book, and it literally will impact every single area of your life. So this book has just been instrumental with thinking differently about things. A great business book is called The E-Myth Revisited.
I'm reading that right now.
Yeah. So
I'm reading that right now.
So particularly for me, it was great because they give the actual like a real life experience of a business owner that what used to be an HVAC technician that turned to be a business owner, and he wasn't a great business owner because he's used to being in the field. That's what he was really good at, you know? So I really like that book. And then, I love anything Tony Robbins. A book I just read about finance is called What Would the Rockefellers Do? And this book is this book will challenge, lifelong concepts you have about finances and investing. So
sick.
I'm not even going to go down the rabbit hole, but it is well worth the read for sure.
Okay. Cool. So yeah, once again, actually, by the time this airs, I'll actually have a full book list that goes episode by episode on wakingupfromwork.com. You can check out resources, and the book list will be there with every single guest's recommendations. So I will pop all those in there under Pete's. And then I guess last, man, just like if people want to stay up to date with where you're at, where do they follow you at? Like social websites, like where can people keep up with you if they want to see how you're doing?
I would say just reach out to me directly, PM me on Facebook, Peter Marston Jr. I don't do a whole lot on social media at all, but, I am accessible. So I'm willing to, chat with anybody anytime and try to be of service and add value in any way that I can. I get, fired up and find my fulfillment and my purpose in contribution and giving back and helping people, navigate life and find out what, fires them up and brings them purpose and fulfillment. So.
Sure. Awesome, man. Cool. Well, dude, thank you so much for being on the podcast. It's been a blast. This is episode 15. That was Mr. Peter Marston, and I will see you guys next week.
Thanks, Dave.